Let's talk about what I think most people are interested in all of this. Let's put aside, because you heard Schefter, you heard Kmart say it earlier, the Jets are insistent that Rodgers was not involved in this, and far be it from me to contradict the reporting of our top reporters. That does not change the fact, however, that some of this is going to stick to him. Just the disaster that this is. If this doesn't turn around, Jeff, how much does this stick to him as we consider the totality of what is inarguably one of the great careers in the history of the sport?
Yeah, massive amount. I mean, he came and got everything he wanted. And if you're going to compare him to the greats of our game, being Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, who left organizations, went to new ones, and brought Super Bowls to those cities, that was the expectation of the Jets bringing in. He got Nathaniel Hackett. He got his players, Lazard, Cobb, whoever else he brought with him. Hey, I got to have my guys. I want to have my coordinator. I want to have my. And all of a sudden, we're laying at the feet of Saleh. Well, guess what? Only one guy's still there. And so if we're saying that his voice is the loudest voice and Saleh was the most unimportant guy in the building and all the things that everybody's saying, well, then it better turn around. And let me tell you, playoffs don't turn it around for me. We didn't talk about playoffs when he came here. We talked about a Super Bowl. So unless you're winning a Super Bowl, if you're Woody Johnson, what else did you need? Because they could have made the playoffs with Saleh. I believe that.
It all sticks to him. I mean, it's the way it's going to be. It reminds me so much of like the NBA, where there's star players that have a tremendous amount of power. There are not a lot of guys in football that are like that. You have them in their quarterbacks. And you know that you have to have a relationship with this guy. And it's more like, I think Hawk was saying, it's more like a partnership than anything. And so now that partner's gone. You can't blame him anymore. And whether you made the decision or not, it's absurd to believe that you weren't at least okay with it. And so now, if it does not work out, it's all going to stick to him, which is fine. If it all works out, we're all going to have to eat crow, and everyone's going to say Aaron Rodgers is the best ever. This is the pressure that comes with being in this situation, and that's where he is right now. If it doesn't work out, it's going to shine a different light on his entire career.
It should stick to him, right? Real leaders understand that I want the credit when I succeed or I fail. If I'm going to come in and do things completely different, and I'm going to say mini camp doesn't matter for young guys, myself included, there's no reason for us to get that work. I'm going to go to Egypt. I'm going to say that all the rules that they put in place are fairy tales, and we can still do this a completely different way. When it all goes down, it should fall on your shoulders, and you should be okay with that. There is no longer an opportunity for him to put blame anywhere else if this is not successful, because the whole idea was, look, this is a dumpster fire. We need you and your ability and your storied career to come in here and change it. And if it doesn't change, you can't then point to the circumstance and be like, well, it was not my fault.
He was brought in here to change the culture, to be the Brady for this and the Peyton for this organization, to do what nobody else has done since Joe Namath, which is to win a Super Bowl, to get these young guys to believe, and in doing that, in bringing him in the door, you are neutering your head coach. Like, that is the reality.
For sure.
And for people now to be a little surprised that Saleh, even Woody, I listened on the conference call, and he's like, I just feel like Ulbrich, like, the guys listen to him. Like, I just feel like there's a spark, and which is fine, but how could Saleh have that spark when Saleh's not the one really in charge of this whole, like, the train is moving, it's not him driving.
I got to say, because you just said something so important. This guy offers a spark, right? And I get what all that. Let me tell you what an assistant or a coordinator is in the off. It's the backup quarterback. He's the most popular guy in the city because you're saying that. You don't think Robert Saleh had that same moxie when he walked in?
Why did we like him in San Francisco?
Right, because he was that guy.
No breaks.
That's
he was
him.
that dude. He was Ulbrich.
Because of who you brought in to be a partner took away his authority. So unless he gives Ulbrich his authority, it's not going to look any different.
I agree with this stuff about him being neutered, and I think that was a position that I held yesterday. It was like you didn't set Robert Saleh up in a way to be successful. But the fact of the matter was it's your job to figure that out. So Robert Saleh got fired because he allowed them to do this.
Yep.
And I know we don't understand exactly what that push hug was about, but it does seem emblematic of that situation where it's like, look, if I gotta knock you out on day one to establish, and I'm gonna get fired, then I get fired on day one doing it my way, rather than being mealy-mouthed around and trying to tiptoe and then eventually getting fired anyway.
You're not giving respect, you earn it.
I don't know the right way to go about it, and it helps if you bring in a. But, I mean, if you bring in a quarterback like that, you need a coach who's already established, or you need a coach who's willing to establish himself there. If you think about the other places where this quarterback came over, worked, like these were coaches who had some credibility.
So, but think about what Woody Johnson said on the conference call. This is not just about these 2 weeks. But he said, I've had a couple years to think about
Exactly.
it. Which tells you this man was not high on his head coach when this season started, which raises the question, why was he the head coach? Why now? 5 weeks in.
Exactly.
We're going to say, okay, pack it up when the division is on the line.
I can tell you why. I'm not going to a break. I'm being told to go. I'm not going to a break. Shefty, go. No, Shefty, answer that question. Why?
Well, let's remember this. Again, when Robert Saleh was hired, Woody Johnson was coming back from the United Kingdom as the ambassador for the United States there. Now, it was his team, and he was aware, and he was on board with all that, but still, Christopher Johnson made the hire of Robert Saleh. And so that always has to be remembered in the backdrop. And now, going forward, so he wasn't exactly always Woody's guy, even though Woody was on board with it and signed off on that particular hire. So this has been going on, as Kmart said, for a couple of years. And there were a lot of people who wondered if the Jets would make a coaching change at the end of last year, and they didn't. And now, if you look at the game on Sunday, if the Jets had found a way to come back and win that game, which they almost did, Robert Saleh probably still would be preparing to coach Monday night. So all this doesn't change some of the issues that this team has had. And this team's offense has not struggled, and it's struggled and not performed the way it should. So now Jeff Ulbrich comes in, and one of the very first big decisions that he's going to face is who's calling the plays on Monday night. Is it going to be Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator, or is it going to be Todd Downing, the quarterback's coach, the pass game specialist? Who's going to do that? And that is up to the new head coach of the New York Jets, Jeff Ulbrich. There's been a lot of chatter that Robert Saleh was ready to promote Todd Downing to make him the play caller.
This is my issue with this whole thing, is that he has that decision. You don't think Robert Saleh wanted to make that decision?
Right.
That's what's piss poor, bro, is that you're going to let, because the new guy comes in, he gets that ability, but he didn't have, Robert Saleh didn't have that ability. He can't make the change, but the new guy can make the change. That's the problem. You want to know why it's a dumpster fire? Because Woody Johnson panicked at 2-3 when the offensive guys that you brought in and said, hey, Saleh, just handle the defense. They gave up 60 or 97 yards and still lost. They did not get boat raced against the Vikings, and they still lost. It was not. So you don't think Saleh wanted to make a change over there, but all of a sudden now the new guy can't make a change? That's my issue. This team could still make the playoffs, and I would not tell you they're better off without Saleh than with him. I understand you have an issue with that. I get it. But with this new constructed roster, I would tell you they were still fully capable of making the playoffs. Not with Zach Wilson. We can say about his record and all that kind of stuff. They were a formidable football team with Saleh and running this football team, and Woody Johnson. If you're waiting on it for 2 years, you should have fired him in the offseason and brought in the new.
But he couldn't. And so I wanted to jump in when Shefty said that. And when Kmart first brought it up, he couldn't fire Robert Saleh at the end of last season because he would then be trying to find a coach who would be willing to take a job when the prerequisite is Nathaniel Hackett is going to be your offensive coordinator. And as I said earlier, Mike Vrabel's not taking that job, and Bill Belichick's not even answering the phone. He hates the Jets anyway, but that's a different topic for another day.
If you're an owner,
no
you gotta
coach
own
with
it.
options is taking that job.
Then fire
when you already
Hackett.
have that guy. But he can't fire Hackett. Why?
Yeah.
Because who's in charge, Jeff?
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. So
Say the
dumpster
name
fire,
so everyone knows
Aaron
what
Rodgers.
that's the point.
That's exactly right.
So you have turned everything over to Rodgers, and you know what? I've been in support of that all along because there's been no evidence whatsoever from the day Woody Johnson took over the team that he has any idea how to run it. So bring Rodgers in and try it. They haven't hosted a playoff game since January of 2003. Only the Browns have waited longer. They're the only team since he took over, since Ambassador Johnson took over the Jets, not to win that division more than once. The Bills and the Dolphins have, and obviously the Patriots owned it for the longest possible time. So these problems predate Aaron Rodgers, and they predate Robert Saleh.
Yeah.
The point is, Rodgers, as much as we want to criticize him, and nothing you said is wrong, and I don't disagree with it, he's still the best chance they have.
No question.
He's still the one person who has indicated he has some idea how to get this thing done.
The thing is, though, all organizations have issues. All teams have problems. And we're not going to make excuses for the rest of those teams, so we shouldn't for this either. I think that's true about Robert Saleh. That's true about Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's absolutely true about Woody Johnson. Like, they all are culpable in this. But we're not going to remember. No one talks about owners years and years later. No one's going to talk about Robert Saleh unless he gets another head coach coaching job at some point. This fair or foul, it's all going to fall on Aaron Rodgers' lap. And whether he can complain about it, be upset about it. If they go on to win the Super Bowl this year, Aaron Rodgers will be exalted. And all of us will rethink all the decisions we made because clearly Aaron Rodgers knows something we don't know.
Take all mini camp out.
If they lose it, then it's all on his back.
If the Jets win the Super Bowl, we do the show live from Egypt. That's it.